Progression is important in video games. That just goes without saying. Progression is a feeling that you're actually advancing throughout the story, throughout the plot. You get the bigger and better weapons, you go to bigger and more dangerous places, enemies get tougher, you learn cool new tricks and abilities that you weren't capable of doing before. You get better transportation or better allies. You just feel like you're getting this natural progression within the world of your game. And that's how you know you're getting somewhere, and that's how you know that you're doing something right. And that's something that makes a video game feel good to play. Hello everyone, welcome to the show. Today's topic is, you already know, progression. So I recently beat Dark Souls, and I'm kind of on a hiatus from this series because of life, and I am planning on beating Dark Souls 2 eventually. But there's a lot that I loved about Dark Souls 1. One of them is its feeling of progression. Dark Souls does this like no other game, if I'm being honest, and here's why. First of all, the level design. The level design is made in a way to make you feel like you're naturally progressing, and it's done in a subtle and obvious way all at the same time. See, Firelink Shrine is kind of like the hub world. This is your resting place, and where most NPC characters you save go for to give you stuff or teach you spells and such, or to just add something new to the story. So you'll always find a way back to Firelink Shrine one way or another. But see, when I first started playing this game, I didn't think of it as much of a hub world. Mainly because Dark Souls is such a huge, somewhat open world kind of experience, and I just thought that I'd be bopping from place to place, never really making it back to Firelink Shrine unless I wanted to take the long way back. But then, something magical happened. I found my first shortcut back to Firelink Shrine in the Undead Parish. And it blew my mind! I was like, whoa, I'm back? I never thought I'd be back. This is amazing. Now I have a way back and forth from here. Wow. And then I figured, okay, so there might be a few shortcuts scattered throughout to help alleviate the pressure of backtracking if I wanted to get back to the shrine. And it was good for me because I played as a mage and I needed to go back to Vinheim to learn spells and whatnot. But at the time of me first unlocking that first shortcut, I still didn't really think of Firelink Shrine as the hub world. I just thought of it as a separate place to come back to from time to time if you found a shortcut, and that it wasn't a big deal or anything. But then, once you get to Anor Londo and get the Lord Vessel, that's when I really started to appreciate the level design of Dark Souls. And that's when I started to understand Dark Souls' progression. And it's really good if I'm being honest. See, what the Lord Vessel does, for those of you who don't know or who forgot, it lets you teleport to previous checkpoints you've been to, one of them including being Firelink Shrine. That's when I realized that Firelink Shrine was the main hub world for you to return to after a long day of adventuring. Because in other RPGs, there are hub worlds, or main towns at least. Sometimes it's easy to get back to them at the early parts of the game, and sometimes they're not, and sometimes you hardly ever go back to that hub world. But as you progress throughout the game, you begin to get better methods of transportation. Take Final Fantasy. You get a vehicle that lets you traverse ground levels more easily, and then eventually a boat or a ship for water levels, and then eventually an airship or something, and that lets you go back and forth between places so much more easily, including the homeworld, or in other games they just let you teleport almost immediately if you wanted. That's progression, and that's a nice way of the game saying, oh hey, you've come a long way, visited so many places, now here's your reward, better transportation. No longer do I feel like a dirty, weary traveler having to go back and forth to places on foot. No longer do I feel like a low-level warrior still having to suffer in order to make it to somewhere. No more. Not with the Lord Vessel. The Lord Vessel makes it easier to progress and to return, and makes the entire open world center around the Firelink Shrine, and of course Frampt and the Lord Vessel being used as the next main key of your main objective in the game for collecting Lord Souls. And because of the Lord Vessel, all the other places that you couldn't get into before all now open. All these big, crazy, harder places, all these big, crazy, harder bosses, all these big, crazy, harder levels. That's level design, my friends. That's progression. And that's why Dark Souls is so dang good. Ni no Kuni does a good job of this too. You start out with just running, and then eventually you get a boat, and then as time goes on, you get a dragon. A freaking dragon! To ride around everywhere! I mean, if that isn't cool, if that isn't level of progression, I don't know what is. Final Fantasy X does this to the same effect as well, except that game's a little different because there's no open main world to travel to, so when you get your airship, it's a little less effective, but hey, at least you get to pick up all the cool treasure you missed everywhere on your first visit to these places. I mean, that's cool. Yeah. But I mean, not only that, but of course the weapon leveling as well. As you explore more throughout the game, you find different blacksmith embers to give to the blacksmiths, and they in turn are able to craft and forge better weapons for you. It doesn't seem like much at first because you'll just find like a scattered ember here and there in the early parts of the game, but from mid to late game you start finding these things in harder and harder spots, and the embers get bigger and they begin to stack up. And then soon enough, the weapon branches and possibilities are open, wildly open. Ni no Kuni does a good job of this kind of sort of thing too. You just get bigger and better familiars to capture and fight with. Pokemon suddenly has higher leveled up and evolved form Pokemon to fight. Final Fantasy VIII, you find the better weapon magazines and you slowly start to craft better weapons as you progress. That is progression. See, progression isn't something to take lightly in a video game. Depending on how the game is made, how the feeling of progression is implemented, it can make or break your game. It can mean the difference between wanting to play more and not wanting to play more. See, it's a powerful thing when you take away power from your character and then slowly but surely give it to them as time goes on. Mega Man X is another great example of progression and how it fits nicely together within the story. Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy XIII, however, isn't something I feel like I made progression in, albeit I did only play the first hour or two really, but that game is just weird. I have to level up and progress my character by playing side missions, even though they aren't required, but they are if I want to stand a chance against better enemies, or else I have to play on easy. I don't know. Sorry, this video isn't about Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy XIII, but that should be saved really for another day. Sorry. But anyway, Dark Souls and progression, ladies and gentlemen. So that is the episode for today. I hope you all enjoyed. Please leave a comment below if you want to order me around and tell me what topics or video games you'd like to see me cover in future episodes. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Peace out. Oh, and sorry everyone, I forgot to mention the score for Dark Souls. I know I always give a score for every game just to give like a basic summary for everyone about how I felt about it. So for Dark Souls, I give it a 10 million divided by lightning.